Morning, everybody, and welcome to the first panel of the day, Innovation in the London Market. So we've got an esteemed panel to my left, ranging from insurance and tech, which is pretty good since it's an InsurTech event, brokers, MGAs, and insurers, with a dose of journalism as well to boot. So without further ado, let me introduce them. We've got Olivier Marr on the far left. Olivier is head of aviation at Elsco, the fintech specialty underwriting platform, which is headquartered, interestingly, in Dubai. So bienvenue. Next up, we've got Graham. Graham is CEO of Azure, which is an InsurTech company operating as an MGA. And Graham, you're also chairman of BrightTalk, which is a West Coast-based tech company. And when we say West Coast, presumably we mean San Fran, not Aberystwyth. Good. And then we've got Lynn Grobler, CIO at Hyperion Insurance Group. So actually got to do all the hard work and heavy lifting of transforming a business. Before Hyperion, Lynn spent 16 years at BP, and has also led transformation projects in banking. And then Will is Innovation Leader, which is a fantastic title, at Channel Syndicate, which is part of the global reinsurer SCOR. And Will, many of you might know him, is involved in a number of InsurTech initiatives around the market, including the Treasury, Tech City, Tech Delivery Panel, FinTech Delivery Panel, is that close enough? And then last but not least, we've got Mark Gagan, who started as a broker and reinsurance broker. So he's been at that end of the insurance market, but more recently is a well-known figure around the market in his role as managing director of the Insurance Insider. So be careful what you say.
No, I'm not on duty today. We've got reporters in the audience, so still be careful what you say.
Right, okay, well, it's Friday and you're not sat at your desk, so let's have a round of applause for our panel before we go. Okay, so innovation in the London market. You're all familiar with the heritage of the London insurance market. You know, the biggest in the world, £67 billion worth of premiums. Invented marine insurance in 1688 between cappuccinos. Invented motor insurance in 1904. Aviation insurance in 1911, which was less than 8 years after the Wright brothers, which, to be fair, didn't go too well because they stopped a year later after so many crashes. But still, we've had Betty Grable's legs being insured for $1 million. We've had, in 1965, first satellite insurance, less than 8 years after Sputnik. And more recently, the London market's been at the forefront of insuring SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, and has clearly been a pioneer in cyber insurance. So it's got a lot going for it, the London market. And so to get some objectivity, though, it's best to ask a Frenchman. How innovative, Olivier, is the London market?
Well, I think a good way to measure the innovation of the London market is to actually look at the number of Japanese tourists who come in the city to take pictures of brokers walking around with slips and underwriters with stamps. Because that's actually the reason we got all those tourists is we're so prehistorical in our approach that it's worth a touristic visit. Take our industry, aviation. In 20 years, they've changed completely their business model, inventing the low cost. At the same time, the cost of Lloyd's of London have increased by more than 30% in the same period. They've invented ancillary products, completely changed their source of business. At the same time, with phone coverage for free. They have completely taken control of their distribution, going from travel agents to web-based. At the same time, we're inventing the big notion of line slips and, facilities with brokerage around 30%. We're in a business that trades currently at close to 50% frictional cost between brokerage and the industry. I don't call that an innovative model. I call that a dying model. And I think innovation is something we're going to have to said it's time to start. So was Lloyd's innovative in the 19th century? In the early 20th century, undoubtedly. But is our generation being innovative? I actually doubt it.
Let's turn to you, Will, as arguably the youngest on the panel then. Things are happening though, right? So what progress are we making?
Well, I think I hear what you're saying, but I have to say that I've got a fundamental problem with this idea that the London market isn't innovative. I think we're all far too negative about what's been happening. I mean, I have to say that because otherwise I'm out of a job. But if you look at what the London market is this huge concentration of talent, capital, expertise, and also a really well-tested regulatory framework for engaging in the types of partnerships that can actually let you work with some of these disruptive companies. And I think this idea that just because some of the infrastructure and the walking around with slips is perhaps outmoded, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything in the London market de facto isn't innovative. And I think there's some really good examples, certainly that we're seeing, of companies who are coming to London because they see it as the easiest way to get access to multiple insurance markets with people who fundamentally understand what they're doing and who can adapt to what they're trying to do.
And Mark, you've followed the market for many decades now, so...
Well, look, time is now, because I'm seeing people in the audience here who 15 months ago would not have come anywhere near a technology conference. 15 years ago, I tell you, the only way you'd get a technology story on the front page of one of our newspapers would be if it's gone wrong. It would be £100 million in the hole, and who's going to carry the can for it? The time for it, there has never been a better time. The window of opportunity has been opened, and also I think we've almost already had the kind of Netscape moment with there's a company called Simply Business. Somebody managed to triple their money in a year, and if you weren't interested in technology before, you're probably interested in money, and you're ambitious. So that's got the attention of everybody, and people who were not interested in technology before. And at the same time, we've got tons of capital, we've got a really difficult market, and we've got technological problems, infrastructure problems that need solving anyway, that we've been putting off for such a long time because we've been failing with these massive big whale projects that have gone wrong. So you couldn't have a better confluence of all the stars coming into alignment all at the same time. It's a great time to get yourself listened to and to get things changed.
That's great, but it's bloody difficult though, isn't it? So Lynn, you're every company you come across is dealing with legacy systems, legacy processes, and frankly, legacy people as well. So, you're at the heart of this. How difficult is it, and what's working well?
So, I mean, clearly there's a great opportunity for us to leverage some of the modern technology that's out there. But meantime, we have to keep our business going as it is. So our focus is very much on what can we do that changes our business model to enable us to get more revenue? And then how can we actually completely have a new business model? And it almost leads to, from an IT perspective or a tech perspective, this concept of two-speed IT. We've got to keep those legacy systems running because it's really expensive and difficult to get off them. But at the same time, we're looking at how do we partner with some of the insurtechs to come up with the new business models that are going to let us do things completely differently. We ran an innovation day within Hyperion about a year ago. And I was absolutely blown away by the ideas that the guys came up with in terms of what can be done. So we have no shortage of ideas. It's really just how do we get those into production? How do we get them over the line? And how do we start making revenue? So our approach is very much one of we've got to keep the legacy going, slowly shrink it, slowly move away from it, but at the same time, partner with those in the insurtech world who can help us get there quickly on the modern new ideas.
That's great. That's a good point to bring Graham in, because you haven't got the legacy. So how are you helping insurers?
Well, I think that if you look at what's happened in the insurance market in the last 200 years, for the first 200 years of its existence, or whatever it was really all about protecting capital, and capital ruled the roost. And when you started to get free money, quantitative easing, and all that sort of stuff, distribution really took over and really won out. And everybody built their systems for the existing circumstances, because that was what made sense. The trouble is now, I think there's a growing awareness in the world that we're moving into an era where, even in B2B, people are demanding a high-touch, highly personalized digital experience that is mimicking their B2C experience. And the systems that have been built for capital era and for the distribution era simply aren't fit for purpose for that, because you're needing to deliver the real-time experience that Blink talked about earlier. So I believe that the next era is going to be one of product, and the one after that will be when insurance gets buried and it becomes insurance as a service. So if you're going to build InsurTech, you've got to think, I've got to make the right decision about my platform, and I've got to future-proof for what's happening. And you've definitely got a partner, because if you start up and just have a great idea and you think you're going to, I don't know, destroy AIG as a company, you're not going to. You've got to think, I've got to get to market, I've got to distribute this stuff, and you're going to have to partner to do that.
I think that's so true, because at the moment on our legacy systems, to create a new product takes months and it's expensive. Whereas when you look at some of the InsurTech platforms that are out there, you can get a product up really quickly, not just from a technology point of view. It's also about working with people who think a different way, who help us understand the process to get to a minimal viable product, to help us understand that actually 500 questions is not a good idea online. What are the 6 questions that you need to ask, and how can technology answer some of those other questions? So for some of us, it's also working with people who can help us think and operate in a more agile and different way, and that's something the tech companies bring to the table that maybe the insurance companies don't naturally have in their DNA.
Well, I completely agree with that. I think the only thing that's worth saying is if you look at the huge range of startups that we've seen, the most credible are those where you have someone with an insurance background and then a group of the techies. And unless you have that blend, our experience is that the chance of success reduces quite dramatically.
But at the core of the London market is underwriting, right? So from an underwriting perspective, Olivier, how innovative is the market being in that regard, and what will change in the future?
Well, I think the difficulties that I outlined earlier are actually opportunities for all of you. There's going to be a new vision to information. Information is widely public, and the use of public information by insurance companies to avoid relying completely on underwriting submissions with limited info is one of the great ways to change the future. I know today the position of each aircraft in the world, real-time on Flight Radar 24, right? You all can do that. And the submission of Delta Airlines is 4 pages. There is a gap between what is publicly available and what is given. This is the opportunity for all of you to reinvent. There are brokerage and systems of distribution that can be reinvented. So actually, it's out of the weaknesses and the legacies of London that there is an opportunity to each of you to change the model. If everything was perfect, there wouldn't be this InsurTech meeting. It's because there's something to grab.
And Mark, you spend a lot of your time talking to CEOs around the market. Are they talking the talk, or are they now actually walking the walk?
I think they are walking the walk, and I think it was interesting what we were saying before, that ability to change culturally, I think, is the hardest possible thing. I mean, we had an InsurTech prize for the first time at our kind of annual prize-giving awards, and the one that won it was the one that was providing the technology that was providing the ability to change quicker and to bring things to market quicker and to test things quicker, because that's the cultural change that tech has got that we haven't got. It takes so long to build something that you don't know it's broken until sort of 15 years after you start, and you never know where it was, But that's one of the biggest possible challenge. And information, the whole success of the London market was built on information in the very first place. Edmund Lloyd, a very smart guy, made a really good cup of coffee, got everyone together, but at the same time, he had the best information. He had Lloyd's List. If you want to know what shipping news was, what cargo was being loaded onto what ship, and which ship had smashed into an island somewhere, that was where you went, and you got it from him. And that's what actually some of the core of what made the London market really good was information. And for me, that was my kind of epiphany of when I suddenly realized that InsurTech wasn't just something was something suddenly we could be putting on the front page and we should be paying a lot more attention to as the camp follower of the London market in many ways. For me, it was a moment when, this is about big risks. We've always seen InsurTech as being consumer insurance. It's sort of Fitbits for pets and it's smart homes and all that kind of stuff. But I went along to an Intertech meeting and I saw someone talking about an Internet of Things platform, and it's suddenly, and he said, well, his biggest client was the Port of Amsterdam, and that was suddenly, wow, that's a core London market client. That's a big, scary, big risk, and something that we're really used to insuring. And it was surprising that they were using huge amounts of information and insight into getting captains to moor their ships in a safer way that caused less losses and actually helped them run the port better and also made them into a better insurance risk. So that's the future, is all that information that Olivier is talking about, the millions of sensors being put into an underwriter's decision-making process.
So Graham, help us get a bit more specific then. So we talk about tech. I'm bamboozled with the buzzwords, telematics, robotics, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, API, IoT. We could go on. Which technologies are really at the heart of the transformations that you've been describing?
I think it's a really interesting confluence of events happening which make the opportunity so interesting. And it's the advent of genuine cloud computing. And by that I mean single code, multi-tenant. So if you think about a typical legacy enterprise software provider, they'll have multiple iterations of their code. And that ends up like a plate full of spaghetti because you've got to maintain all that code. Facebook's got one version of the code globally, 1.9 billion people. And so you're moving from a world of coding to a world of configuring. That means you're building products using objects that are predefined rather than having to code every individual piece of the pie. That is the single most transformational thing that's happening. And it's removing IP from the tech stack quite rapidly. I think it's very deflationary for a lot of expensive legacy enterprise systems. Lynn alluded to it. And so the challenge for the insurance industry is to actually understand and embrace that. If the CEO of an insurance company can't talk confidently about cloud computing, then they're not going to get what's going on. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to bring that stuff in-house and bring that knowledge in-house. And that will bring the innovation. And just on data, if you think about the typical transaction chain in the London market, you've got a US client. You've got a US client, a US retailer, a US wholesaler, a London market wholesaler, a Lloyd's syndicate, and then some underlying capital. There is no easy route for data to flow up and down that transaction chain because everybody's on different systems, none of them can talk to each other. And so, whereas there used to be perfect information, there is now imperfect information in that system. It's rendered inefficient by the fact that the information's out there, it's just nobody can get their hands on it in an easy way. Massive challenge.
Lynn, does that resonate with what you're
Very
seeing?
much so, very much so. Although I would say you don't always have to have the team in-house. And, there are ways of using technology teams externally to your company. What you do need in-house is that way of thinking and that agile way of thinking. And the cloud computing is one of the technologies, absolutely, that helps get quicker product to market. And that sort of comes back to again and again, how quickly can we get something to market? How quickly can we prove it out? How quickly can we get revenue through it or bin it because it didn't work? And that's what this new technology allows that our old legacy systems just don't give us.
What about people? You talked about CEOs just a moment ago, Graham. Will, what do you think about the skills and capabilities that the London market needs today and more importantly needs tomorrow?
Well, I think this conference actually is a great example of the kind of change that needs to happen. Because when Gilbert and Seb were putting it together, they mentioned it to me, and I have to say, I thought, not another bloody conference. I can't deal with any more because there are just so many all on the same topic. But what I think is great is the amount of kind of younger people in the market at this event, which is totally different to any of the others. And if I look at the skills that we have from our graduates, kind of across SCOR, I think one of the things we need to make sure over the next 5 to 10 years is that all of them without necessarily being complete domain experts, can confidently understand what a machine learning model is, the different types of machine learning model, how they work, how they interact with traditional underwriting, and so on for all of those kind of, that technology span.
And what skills, Olivier, would you be looking for in your company going forward?
The ability to question the existing things. What we're looking is for people who question the system, and to question the system, you need to question yourself. And be prepared to say, things have been done this way for many, many years. How can I improve it? We're not looking for revolutionaries. We're looking for people who will gradually make things progress. I think what you said is very right. There will be a place for everybody in the industry. It's not going to be the death of the incumbent player and the arrival of completely new guys on the block making everything. It's going to be very gradual, but there is so much that can be changed every day in every angle of the process. It's by small improvements that we end up doing something completely revolutionary. So it's at every level. What is it I can do better when I wake up every morning? If we find those guys, they're going to trouble.
And I think those guys often are the younger generation who definitely do get a lot of this. The challenge is, how do they influence the decision makers? Because the decision makers in our companies are the older generation, typically. And it's sometimes that older generation who don't get it. So how can those younger people put themselves in their shoes and put a good business case forward for the good ideas? Because it's all very well that you've got this great techie idea, but how can you present that in a way that your boss sees that as an opportunity to change the bottom line, either through getting cost out or through growth? And so it's that influencing skill that I think we are short on. We've got the great ideas, we've got the new generation full of them, but how can they influence the more senior guys to actually listen to them and consider trying their good idea?
Yeah, Mark, just thinking of parallels with dot-com boom and everything that came out of that, you and I are old enough to remember that. What's your sense when you look at what's been going on the last few years in the London market?
I think it's been really, really healthy. I mean, funny enough, I stopped being an insurance broker and became a journalist just at the time of the dot-com boom, and I used to go along to evenings, a bit like Instech. It was the first Tuesday, and all these, it was quite exciting. It was the sort of happenings, and it's been very exciting that things like that are happening. You're talking about, it's interesting to say, at a company like Aon, you've got reverse mentoring, which is quite interesting. We've got your typical sort of, someone a bit older than me, sort of, very senior executive actually being reverse mentored by 25-year-old graduate to sort of see their perspective. So they are, I think that's more than just paying lip service to things. So I'm pretty optimistic that there will be a change. If not, the window's been opened. I think once people have seen what's on the other side, okay, we have another big hurricane tomorrow. The window's going to be shut for a while because we're going to be too busy dealing with today's business, and that's going to be another thing on our in tray. But when that is cleared, people will still get, I think no one's going to forget that there is something on the other side of that window that they've had a quick glimpse of, and they will get back to it, and it's at the sort of the genie's out of the bottle now. I think everyone knows what they must do, and I don't think that it's just paying lip service.
And Will, when we look at InsurTech as a whole, outside the London market, and we look at the customer journey from distribution through to product development, underwriting, claims, and back office servicing, a lot of the focus in InsurTech more broadly has focused on the distribution and product proposition end. Has that been true in the London market? Where do you see it going?
Well, if I take the broad definition of the London market, the stuff we see coming in the InsurTech space, definitely, if you go back to 2016, almost everything was distribution focused. And it was either trying to compress that chain in terms of the distribution layers, or trying to find new ways of getting products in the hands of people. And I think what's happened this year is the amount of opportunities we've seen has definitely come down, but their credibility and their relevance to the large commercial specialty reinsurance elements of the London market has shot up. And I think that there are some great kind of weird and wonderful examples for the underwriters out there. So, if I was to say title insurance in Ghana, I think 90% of people would say, okay, no land registry, can't touch it. And yet, the Ghanaian government has got into bed with a blockchain startup who's creating an immutable record, and they want to create a title insurance product which starts with effect from the first time things are going onto that record. And suddenly, this kind of thing does become interesting and exciting, because while it is unusual and not normal, there is the margin to deal with the London cost base, which is admittedly relatively high.
Let's bring a geographic perspective then. So you're based in London, Olivier, but your company's headquartered in Dubai. What advantages do you see London having over other markets from an innovation perspective, and what are some of the weaknesses?
Clearly, a concentration of talents is unique. In London, it's easy to attract very talented people, but maybe there is a mindset that is not as linked to innovation. There is an individual greed in London. There is an absolute value for money, an individual success that is such that it's not always easy to embark people in collective adventures. And innovation is a collective adventure. Innovation is the idea that alone I can't do nothing. It's going to be only a team of 5, 6, 10 people, whatever that is, that working together are going to share their experience to make something new happen. And this collective impact, this necessary element of a team spirit, is actually sometimes easier to find in a place where, like Dubai, which is a bit more, mixed culture than London is. So maybe the individualism and the passion for individual success for London might be his weakness. The quality of his individual talents is a bit of his strength. And
Graham, how does this compare to the West Coast?
I'm a wannabe hipster, and I found the West Coast completely intoxicating. And it's just a land where it's okay to fail, and if you're going to fail, you fail fast. You don't make the same mistake twice, and people just bounce back, and they've got the next idea. It's very innovative, very brave, and very risk prone. I think that the large corporate in London is risk averse, and it's politically driven from the top. The biggest thing is culture in the firm, and if you look at a company like Spotify, they've inverted the master-servant relationship. The teams drive the product innovation, and the managers are there to help them unblock things, but they make the decisions. It's a very high trust environment. It's really, trust me, it's really hard to do, because you bite your fingers when you're watching it happen. But that's what you've got to embrace. You've got to lose the old ways of doing things to do this, and the culture is the biggest single thing that gets you there.
So yeah, I don't think there's any cultural argument that that London is more innovative than the West Coast. But I think what you have to remember when it comes to insurance is there are a lot of problems in terms of achieving innovation in the US market because of how the admitted state-by-state market works. So if you're trying to, say, fundamentally transform homeowners insurance, it's almost impossible. You can transform the distribution, you can transform the onboarding experience, and you can try and improve the underwriting using better data, but you can't fundamentally change the product, because at the end of the day, you are writing to an Accord standard HO3 or HO6 form. And I think what we have to remember in London is we have that product freedom, which in a lot of other territories or in a lot of other regulatory environments you don't have.
It's amazing. I mean, I had doing an interview with Daniel Schreiber the other day of Lemonade, one of the sort of pin-ups of the whole insurtech world. He's got 14 licenses, but he's only operating in 3 states. It's like, he hasn't got a machine algorithm to file ratings patterns yet in different states, or maybe he doesn't have enough capital either to actually be able to underwrite in all those states. We don't know. But that's fascinating, and you can do that in London. Okay, you can moan about the regulation here, but once you've got it, once you're in, you are plug and play in some ways. And there's, you shouldn't beat up about, so some of the failures. I mean, we reported yesterday on the failure of Guevara. It's probably a lack of capital. There's no lack of capital here. Here you could plug that capital. That capital could be assembled for you. You don't need to have all the capital. The capital is here. Consortia, syndicated risk. You can put together billions and billions of dollars of capital here. So I'd be really optimistic about the ability of London to be able to do a lot of these things. And we've got the ecosystem here. It already exists. And you should be able to plug and play into it. Absolutely.
So what should insurance companies do? I'm just looking at my watch. We're 46 minutes in before Lemonade got mentioned, so that's probably a world record.
I'm here, you know. Why don't they start a Lloyd's syndicate? It'd be a lot easier.
So perhaps I'll throw this at the innovation leader in the group. Most insurance companies get going and think that actually this is important now. So the first thing they do is appoint a head of innovation. Then they need to set up a lab, a garage, or a hub, if you like. And then then go off and tour the world. It's important to see what's going on in Silicon Valley and Israel and elsewhere. And then they find $100 million from somewhere if they've got the size to set up a VC fund, add an incubator and accelerator, and away you go, right? Is that the right way forward? What do you think, Will?
I think there's a broad church of possible solutions. I think for us, the first thing you do is go through that stage of looking kind of through all the available options and trying to understand what they mean for your business and for your business's strategy. And if you look at how people have approached it, there are people out there who are trying to learn, but ultimately their investments are driven by the need to make financial returns. There are those who ultimately see kind of a cultural change as the target goal, and so on and so on. And for us, it's more about thinking about what is our strategy over the next 3 to 6 years. How can we ride what's going on and take ourselves further along that 3 to 6 year journey in a compressed time frame? So everything has to be related to, tangentially related to the areas of underwriting, claims, risk, and data. It's very interesting to us if we see something which is in a remote fringe, but it's not something where we're going to spend all of our time engaging and investing into that company. It needs to be directly related to who we are, what we do, and where we want to be.
Graham, what do you think? What should insurance companies do?
I think insurance companies, I agree with Lynn, they should partner. Because it's really, it's a bit like daddy dancing. It's really difficult to do this stuff from inside when you've got an existing culture. And the easiest way is to run a dual process. You can't get around the fact you've got legacy. But the best place, the hotbed of innovation, where the rubber meets the road is where there's real risk. People's houses are on the line. They're working unbelievably hard. They're taking massive amounts of risk to do this stuff. And that's the place where the most interesting things happen. And then they don't happen in safe environments. They happen in highly risky, dangerous environments. And you've just got to dive in and get stuck in, I believe.
Ask the same question to Lynn and then Olivia. What should people be doing? What should insurance companies do?
So I think if you are a big company, you've got that corporate glue you need to worry about. So it's how can you work out a way that you can get the fast decision making? And, I've seen that work well where you have small teams, prove something, get it over the line, and then it'll go viral rather than trying to stop and run the traditional waterfall approach of a big project. So just keep it nimble, quick decision making and small teams.
Olivia?
At the moment, I left larger insurance companies to join a fintech because it was all about quarterly returns, quarterly numbers, short-term vision. This needs to go. Innovation is not short-term. You need to be able to think 1 year, 2 years. Secondly, it was about pleasing the boss. Innovation is about being proud of what you do and believing in what you do. Because if you're going to be slightly different, you're going to accept that what your approach is probably not going to be the one that's consensual. And 3, it was about, if I lose money, it's fine, as long as it's done compliantly. The question now is, how much money can we make? What's the success? What's the recipe for success? Not for losing money compliantly. And there shouldn't be a reward, and when it's your money at risk, there's no feeling better that, okay, I failed compliantly. This acceptance of failure on a compliant manner is something that should disappear from the large industries. But that's a massive cultural change, and I think it's easier to say than to do.
We've only got about 5 minutes left, but if there's a question from the audience, please stick up your hand and take the opportunity now, or we'll keep going. There we go. Is it possible to chuck you the microphone? Perhaps, do you mind just shouting? Okay, so I think there's two elements to that. So the first is about Tom and the role of Tom in the transformation of the London market. But I think your intro was talking about the angle of the younger generation almost, how they can get more engaged. I think in that. But let's pick off maybe not. Okay. So let's just focus on the Tom one then. Who fancies picking that up?
Well, you know,
Go on, Mark.
when I was a
You've seen every London market modernisation initiative
no,
over
I
the
used
years.
to
So
be a broker.
what makes Tom different?
When I was a broker, I didn't have a computer on my desk. And then I got one. And then that was great because we could send faxes to the same person and print it off 3 times. But the vendor of that sort of, right, Mark, you're young, go off and trial this new thing. It's going to be called Broker 2000. It was part of a placing system called EPS, Electronic Placing Support. I went and trialed it. It was really interesting. That was 1994. And I've been waiting for this ever since. I went and trialed PPL the other day, and it's good. It's good. Everyone should use it. And it's the beginning. It's crazy to think that we've always had the technological reform the wrong way around. You know, you need to start as you mean to go on. You can't. Why wouldn't you place business electronically first and then do everything else? It's completely insane. So if you don't get involved in PPL and you're not trying to do this, you know, this is the beginning of the solving of the problem of a lot of these London market problems, cost problems, distribution problems that we've got. If you don't do this, you're completely crazy, and everyone needs to get behind it and embrace it and make it work. And obviously, it's not being done it's got to be done in small incremental stages. Rather than being a one-solution-fits-all project. And I think those lessons have been learned, and you've got to get behind it. You've got to use it, and then there'll be a new version coming along every 3 or 4 weeks, I hope.
There we are, no sitting on the fence on this panel. Any other questions, Peter? Yeah, wasn't it one of the buzzwords I mentioned? Come on then, Will, blockchain, it's the answer, right?
I mean,
yeah. So, with that being flippant, then, so there's a lot of talk about clearly the London market is ripe for blockchain because there's so many pieces of paper. There's nine times you have to rekey everything. Systems with so many people, so many different versions of the truth as well, across brokers, MGAs, underwriters, reinsurers. Surely blockchain's the answer for sorting all of this out.
I think you have to be a bit careful. So when it comes to single versions of the truth, blockchain is one possible solution. We are much more going down the line of just piping data directly from the original source through API. I don't necessarily think you need blockchain for that. However, we're part of B3I, which is the kind of, I think, the major insurance and reinsurance blockchain consortium. And when it comes to looking at things like NatCat events, anything where effectively the proof that something has happened is easily available from a third party, as we saw from Blink, then yes, I think it's very interesting because it does take the cost out of the chain. Whether you need the crypto element and the kind of immutable element of blockchain versus another form of MDL, I don't know. But we're working through it.
Graham, Lynn, have you got anything to add? Have you been doing any proof of concepts?
We're much less glamorous. We're trying to solve problems that exist in the chain today. But there's no doubt that if you get into the right ecosystem for where you build your tech, you'll get some degree of future-proofing because the big cloud players will all have blockchain in their sites, and along with machine learning and everything else, that's all the buzzwords du jour. So we don't need to take a swing at that right now because there's so many more problems that are just basic. And I agree, there's a lot that you can solve with APIs. And to do that, you need to be in an API-rich environment. And most legacy systems just aren't set up for APIs.
Right, we're just wrapping up then. So in terms of takeaways from this morning's session, there are many, but some that strike me. First of all, huge opportunities. You know, the London market, as I said, is by far the largest commercial and specialty insurance market in the world. that we've heard from Mark and others that the industry leaders have woken up to the opportunities that technology brings. Admittedly, there's still some challenges about actually understanding the potential of technology, also actually making it real in terms of bringing it into the business is no mean feat. But at least, you know, the window of opportunity that Mark described is open. There's a lot of opportunity for everyone in the room to get involved in their companies and industry initiatives, all sorts of events like today's, and push things forward. But I think generally I'm seeing huge optimism around the opportunities. So thanks a lot for participating in this morning's session. We've got a great day ahead. We're going to be talking about hype or reality in later sessions, and the future of the whole market. So thanks for this session, and look forward to seeing you all later. Thank you.